Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is our Friday morning Course in Miracles class. I'm Natoli. Thank you guys for being here. Welcome, live streamers. And today what I'm going to be doing is reading from Cameo number 32. We're in this general New England area to a celebration of life party at Vicki Thomas's house on April 21st. It's a Saturday at 2 o'clock. And her idea is that it's going to be a celebration of all mothers. So she wants to invite everyone to come to sing and to dance and to eat. So I just wanted to mention that. And I'm going to invite Bonnie up to read our daily lesson from Cafe Gratitude. Woo-hoo! Do you have a mic? Where's it? Oh, here it is.
Thank you. I murmured because I had no shoes until I met a man that had no feet. Persian Proverbs. Ain't that the truth? Say out loud 3 times. I am worthy. I am the worthiness of being lovable with the Holy Spirit. Being lovable with the Holy Spirit. Being lovable with the Holy Spirit. My whole life I felt unlovable till I really sat down with Jesus and said, I know how much you love me. I know how much God loves me. Jesus is my really, really spirit God. He's my best friend. He's my brother. I just can't get enough of him. I used to do Norman Vincent Peale, and I would go to lunch with Jesus. This is 40 years ago. And we'd sit out at a restaurant and have lunch together. I would imagine him across from me because it was something Norman Vincent Peale wrote about. So we've always been pals and always been doing lunch and always been together. So he's so simple for me and so loving and so teachable for me. So I'm just grateful to have somebody in my life. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that. I have the same thing and I love how you described it, to do lunch with Jesus. That's awesome. So welcome, everyone. I see some newcomers here. What is your name? Linda? Welcome. And
My name is Wayne.
what is it?
Wayne.
Wayne. Welcome. And welcome everyone new on live stream who's here for the first time. It's always a party on live stream. So if you guys want to type in your name and where you're from and just announce yourself, that would be awesome. And what I'd like for this group to be is engaging. So I'm going to share from Cameo 32, God is, and then I really want us to interact. I have a microphone. Just be aware, we are live streaming to the world right now. So if you don't want to be on the camera, please don't pick up the microphone. Just sit in the back. Just kind of like let Bill know, he's on the camera, that you don't want to be on the camera, and that's all good. So let's all rise and we meet each other in gratitude and love.
Namaste.
And love. Okay, welcome. Okay, welcome everybody. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. And as you guys know, I'm always really inviting people to just get a copy of the book so that you can read it yourself. Because otherwise you're just going to be depending on people outside of you. You're going to be depending on the class. And this is the latest version of A Course in Miracles from the Circle of Atonement. And what they've done is put together 33 essays of the early stories of Helen Shucman and Bill Thetford. And I just find them extremely helpful on my own journey, because what Jesus was doing in those early days in the 1960s, as Helen Shucman was learning to hear the inner voice, was he was training them how to hear, how to listen, how to be still, how to clear away the false beliefs so that you can hear. And so he was training them how to remove the blocks and obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. And for whatever reason, and it's all good, but all of those early parts got taken out of the material. So the book that's been in the world for 50 years doesn't have any of those original notes. And some people think that those original notes were only for Helen and Bill. And that may be true, but when I read those notes of how Jesus was constantly training them to be still, listen to my voice, like, I'm grateful that I get to read them. I'm grateful that I can really hear how I can discipline my own mind. Jesus says that you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. And the real members of my party are active workers. And he has so many just different instructions that he gave to Helen. And I was just reading, I read a bunch of these Cameo essays the other day. There's a whole section in here about devoted priestesses. And he says, I need devoted teachers as much as I need devoted priestesses. They heal the mind, and that is always my own aim. And what he talks about as the priestess is the priestess was the individuals from thousands of years ago who didn't go out to heal. They stayed in their center, and they healed everything from the place where they were. And he's calling for us to do that. So what I'm going to be reading from today, and I'm just going to skip around, and then I'm going to pass the microphone around. I want people to really engage with this lesson, because what this is, it's called God Is, and Helen Shucman makes a decision to abandon all magic. And it was in that decision that her work began. And magic is any attempt to change the illusion, to improve your life, to heal the body. That's magic. Because the body is nothing more than an effect of your own belief. That's all the body is. And so whenever you're trying to change the world or to heal the body, you're trying to heal an effect, and you can't heal an effect. It's impossible. It's like you literally can't touch it. So Jesus is telling us, and I love it. I just did a show yesterday on the Lisa Show, episode 10, and I talked about one problem, one solution. Our one problem is the belief in separation, the belief that you're alone, the belief that you're separate from others. And that one false belief has created an external world of matter, and the body is external to who you are. And now your body's eyes are focused on what's outside of you, because what you are is pure light. And that's what this lesson is today. God is. You encompass everything. There's no space where you're not. And that's what God is. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite long, but I'm going to read as much as I can. And I want to see who can make a decision today. That's always my aim, is the activation, like to really come into this place where you recognize that this is a new day. As much as you've been reading the lessons, reading the book, we come to a place where we have to make a decision. And the decision today is to abandon magic and to devote your mind to God and to helping others. So it says, God is. This is Cameo 32. When Bill and Helen unexpectedly joined in the goal of demonstrating another way, it was as if that flipped on a power switch deep inside Helen. Abilities that had lain mostly dormant in her began to stir to life. At first, she began to have inner visions, and then somewhere in that same summer of 1965, she started to have psychic experiences. So just for anybody who doesn't know what that goal of demonstrating another way is, that is what preceded her hearing the voice in 1965. They were professors of Columbia University. They were in a very hostile work environment, a lot of fighting, there's no solution there. And one day, Bill Thetford, this was before A Course in Miracles, Bill Thetford said to Helen Shucman before they went into a meeting that he was tired of all the fighting and that there must be another way. And he was determined to find the other way, and he was determined to be the other way. And what he said was, I'm going to go into that meeting and I'm going to be different. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to be in that meeting. And he was saying, that's my goal. And Helen said, I join you. And Jesus later told them, which is in the notes, that it was that moment of joining that caused her to be the scribe for A Course in Miracles. That was the opening that was needed. And I love that, because that is what is for all of us. Like, we study and we're in groups and we're like, I want to know what it means. But one moment when your mind becomes so clear and you just say, I don't want the conflict anymore. And you don't know how to heal it. But you come to this moment when you say, I am just going to show up. I'm just going to show up in a new way. And then the joining, like he joined with Helen, and Helen said, yes, I'll join you with it. And what it says in the Bible, where two or more are gathered, there I, the Christ, am in the midst of you. And so that's why it's so powerful to come together with a group like this, because now we're all together. And often you can't do this with your families, right? You can't when your families say, I'm going to devote my entire life to God. I'm going to devote my life to helping others. You just can't say that in your marriage or to your kids usually, but you want to find a place where you can declare it, and you can do that here, and you can do it online. And then it's a safe space where you can actually talk about like any resistance you have about that. Because as soon as we start talking Jesus or God, like I don't want to talk. This is like religion. Oh, this is a religion class. I didn't realize, and so you get to look at the resistances. So that was that goal of demonstrating another way. These experiences aroused considerable fear and anxiety in Helen. After being virtually obsessed with the search for God as a child, she had, as an adult, left religion and spirituality firmly behind. She says, I had shifted from agnosticism to angry atheism, having reached a point where the mere mention of religion irritated me. I was heavily armed with scientific weapons, prepared and even eager to do battle with ideas even remotely religiously toned. Helen apparently saw the notion of psychic abilities as one of these religiously toned ideas. It was as if psychic phenomena were a kind of gateway drug that could lead, excuse me, the unwary into the most dangerous of addictions, the addiction to God. And yet here she was having her own undeniable experiences with the gateway drug. And how could that not lead to fear? Right alongside this fear, however, Helen had another very different reaction to her psychic episodes. She says, I was actually becoming rather proud of the acquisition of such dramatic abilities, she says, and I even caught brief glimpses of fantasy, of power and prestige crossing my mind. This, and then the essays here have Robert Perry's interpretation or description. So that's what this is. This kind of egotism seemed to actually threaten to take hold of Helen's newfound abilities. Some of the stories she reports convey this impression. For instance, when Bill went away on a trip to the Virgin Islands, Helen sent him a mental message to bring her back a Florentine gold pin, which he actually did. On another occasion, as she and Bill prepared for a business trip to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, she saw an inner picture of a Lutheran church. She was so sure that this picture was genuine that she described it in writing, told Bill that they would see it when they landed, and then when they didn't see it, dragged him around town in a taxi looking for it. And so that story, what happened is she later found out that that church did exist, but it existed. She saw it here, but it existed before the Mayo Clinic went up. So when they got there, the church wasn't there. And then later she saw a picture of it. And so what Jesus is describing is what happens to all of us when we first come into this work. It's like you start to find parking spaces, the money starts to roll in, you heal the body, you start to hear the voice for God for some people, you feel things. And a lot of people get stuck there because you think, oh, it's a miracle. Like that's not the goal of this course. The goal of this course is to know thyself, to know yourself as spirit, as eternal, as changeless, and then to help others find their way back to God. That's the whole mind training. And so a lot of people get stuck with the newfound abilities. You actually tap into that place and it's like, oh my God, I know the future. Oh my God, I hear that very clear voice. And that's being stuck in the illusion. And so he then says, and yet some of her psychic experience had an entirely different quality. For example, once when she and Bill were working on a research paper, I love this next story that's coming up, it's so good. Helen suddenly put the papers down and with great urgency said to Bill, quick, Bill, your friend Joe, the one we met in Chicago a while back, he's thinking about suicide. We must send him a message. She then sent the silent message. The answer is life, not death. That evening, Bill called Joe, who said he had been depressed and had actually picked up a gun that afternoon, but had ended up putting it down. And I loved your class last week, Bill. Did you guys watch Bill's class last week on prayer? And Bill read another cameo. Which one was it, 10?
27.
27, okay. So Jesus talks about how to pray. He's very clear that prayer is not asking for things of the world, although that's where many people begin. And what I love about A Course in Miracles is that he takes us where we are beginning. So asking for things is where we begin. And there's nothing wrong with that. because then you get to see the power of God. You get to, like, in asking for things, you are making a connection with God. So it's like that's the beginning step. But then you reach a point where you're recognizing that true prayer is knowing the truth. And when you know the truth in your mind, you're not trying to heal another. Like, so often we see somebody says, I need help in prayers. And a lot of people say, I'm sending you love, I'm sending you prayers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as long as you know that you, the one who's sending the love and the prayers, don't see a problem. That you're not sending love and prayers hoping that the thing gets healed. You're sending love and prayers because somebody asked you for help. So when somebody asks me for help, I say, yes. And then I write, I'm sending love and prayers, because I know that that's the language we use in the world. And so often, like sometimes in Course in Miracles groups or in individuals, they reach a place where they think there's nothing to heal. And then they do nothing. Like they just think, oh, it's not real, so I don't need to write anything. And you might not need to write anything because that's the instruction you're getting. But when somebody says to me, Lisa, I need your help, I'm like, here I am. Yep, what do you need? That's just like, I'm on the field. But I'm never seeing their problem ever, never. I only see wholeness. But I can see the way Jesus can see in me. When I first began, he can see my false beliefs. He can see them. And that's why he can help me. But he never, ever deals with the level of the false belief. He's only looking at wholeness. So this is the place we arrive as miracle workers, where we're simply recognizing, I know who I am, therefore I know who you are. And if you bring me anything other than that, I'm listening here. I'm listening. And then I'm healing it in my mind, not your mind. You brought it to me so that I can recognize in the one mind it's still happening. Does that make sense? And then I'm remembering the truth. So all that's happening is we're catching false beliefs and replacing them with the truth. So in that example, all that happened in that story, this is just a short version. I've read the story before in another book. They never called Job. Helen told Bill, quick, Bill, your friend Joe is thinking about suicide. And later she thought, I don't know, that was stupid. Because you doubt when something comes to your mind. But you training yourself, like what happens for me, the soon as I have a thought about a person, I know they're calling me for help. That's just how it works for me. As soon as I hear a name in my head and I'm just thinking about them, I know that they're reaching out to me because it reached my mind. I'm thinking about them. And then from there, I drop everything. I just drop everything and it's like, boom, there they are, whole and perfect. And then there's a listening. Is there anything I need to do? Like, do I need to reach out to them? Do I need to do anything? So you're living now in an entirely new way. And all she thought, she then sent the silent message. The answer is life, not death. And he got the message. And all he knew was that he picked up a gun and then he didn't know why he put it down. So that's to me what it means to send love and light. You're not sending love and light. You're remembering the truth in your mind and they will get the message. Sometimes I'll just think you're the light of the world. That's it. You're the light of the world. You're awesome. And I know they got it. And then if they don't get it, Jesus might say, okay, call them and physically tell them. Like there's another section in here that Helen is learning. She's training herself to listen to when to start, when to stop with describing. And am I good?
You're rubbing against the wire.
Oh, sorry.
And
Huh.
they can't hear it in here, but on mine, it
Okay.
sounds like something's rubbing.
Okay, sorry. And Helen's learning to hear the voice, and she has a moment when she wants to call Bill on the telephone for something, but she remembers to stop and ask, should I call Bill? And Jesus tells her, keep writing, let's keep going. I'm going to try to get through to Bill and have him call you. But if he doesn't call you by 4:00, you call him. So Jesus is trying to work through all of our minds. He's trying to say, call that person. Because that story, great. Because he's saying, I'm going to try to get Bill to call you, but if he's not listening, you call him at 4. And so now we can really see, like, we're not just dismissing the thoughts that come into our minds anymore. And in the mind training, is sort of a beginning practice where you're like, is that ego? Is that God's voice? What is that? But you're learning to tell the difference. You just learn to tell. And my practice, if I don't know, I do nothing. That's my practice. Like, just be still. Just be still. And if I don't know for sure what I'm supposed to do, I know I don't have to rush. There's no rush in the kingdom of God. You don't have to do anything. And in that, I just trust in that. And so in another instance, on the way back from the Mayo Clinic visit and the desperate search for the Lutheran church she had seen in her mind, Helen put those abilities to different use. And I love this part. She said she was able to psychically feel waves and waves of misery going through a young woman in the airport, even though the woman showed no outward signs of distress. Helen went over to talk to this woman whose name was Charlotte and learned that she was terrified of flying. So I love this story too, because, so often you will feel someone else. Like in the world, we call it an empath. What's the other word for that? Empath? There's another word. I don't remember. But anyways. And
Hey, I'm sorry, but where's your mic? It's up against your skin.
Love this man. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, guys. Is it good?
Yeah, it's when it moves like that, we're hearing the rub.
Okay.
The skin.
Do you want me to put it on my sweater?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try this. Okay.
Good job.
Good job. Thanks, Bill.
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Where you actually feel what someone else is feeling. And that brings me a lot of comfort, because on my path, where I've reached these places where I'm like, I'm there. Like, I know I've reached a place of absolute peace. So why do I feel sadness come just through me like, and then the mind goes, oh, you're not there yet. But when I know something like this, I know, oh yes, I'm the savior of the world. Like, I said yes to take it all on. I don't have to figure out where it came from or what it is. I only recognize, like, oh, okay, I feel something, and it's how she describes it, waves and waves of misery. And she recognized it was coming from her over there. And the outward appearance, she looked totally fine. And this is the place where, as miracle workers, we have to learn to trust that voice. Like, she went to that lady. She went to her in an airport and said, do you need help? And so often we just think, oh, I don't want to bother them. But we're here to bother people. Like, we're here sent by God to bother people. Because otherwise, it's like you just recognize that people are suffering. And it's not, it's an interesting thing for me because I don't even know how to express it so much, but it's like there's nothing to heal, and yet there is something to heal. I don't know how to express it. But it's a place where you're no longer bothered by the appearance of things, but in the same way, a physical body came to me in my absolute worst moment of need back in New York City. I was living in New York. I was so angry. I had gone through this book, and I didn't know one person who had an experience of this message. And I ripped the book up, told God to fuck off. And I just said, I'm done. I am done. And I need a physical human body to come and stand in front of me and help me. And like 3 days later, this woman named Greta showed up in my Course in Miracles group, and she spoke the words. And often people will just be in a room and they'll be like, oh, I'm just going to be the light of the world quietly. And you can do that. But I really find that often we're needed. It says in here, Christ needs your hands, your feet, your ears, your eyes to be the message, to demonstrate the message. And Greta later told me the story. She was en route from Europe to Wisconsin and got delayed overnight in New York City. And she heard, I got to find a Course in Miracles group to go to. And she found a Course in Miracles group on the Upper West Side, which was my group. She could have stayed in her hotel that night and just waited until she could catch her plane for tomorrow morning. But something was in her mind that said, you go to that course group. And that's how God is working with us, through us. And you have to start listening. Like there is no tomorrow when you catch your plane. Wherever you are is where you've been sent. And again, you don't have to do things, but if you're being instructed, it's time to start listening and moving with it, just trusting with it. And she didn't know. She didn't know until later I told her, like, oh my God, like you're the answer to my prayers. Thank you for letting the message flow through you. So they talk about how this woman, Charlotte, ended up coming and living in Helen's apartment in New York City. And what Helen realized, that what the sort of the paradox of that whole trip is that she went looking for a Lutheran church in Rochester, Minnesota. And because of that woman, Helen recognized she was the true church. She was, not a building, her. And Jesus talks about the true church as a relationship. That's the altar. The altar is not your body. The altar is the holy relationship. So she said, and then Charlotte was a Lutheran. That was funny. Helen says, so she went looking for a Lutheran church, and then she says Charlotte was Lutheran, and she was sure all she had to do was find a Lutheran church in New York. So Helen goes to Rochester, Minnesota to find a Lutheran church, meets Charlotte, who's going to New York to find a Lutheran church, and they would take care of her there. So Charlotte had no money. She didn't know anyone. Later finds out that she'd run away from home. She lied to Helen. She told Helen, she didn't tell her that she'd run away from home. Helen says, Bill and I exchanged glances. The message was not hard to grasp. And this, I seem to hear, is my true church helping another. That's our true church. You are the Church of Christ, and we're here to help others. Not the edifice you saw before. So it talks about Charlotte being in New York and needing assistance. And Robert Perry writes, with both Charlotte and Joe, the guy that was going to kill himself. The point of the story was not an amazing ability Helen had. The point was that someone in crisis had received critical help just when he or she needed it. Here, then, was an entirely different way of seeing Helen's surprising gifts. Using them for a loving purpose was an alternative to both her feelings of pride and feelings of fear. And he said this point was not lost on Helen. The episode with Charlotte in particular helped shake her out of her fantasies of celebrity and bringing her to her senses. She, Helen, said of Charlotte, I am very grateful to her. I have an idea that I might never have found the scroll. So I'm going to talk about the scroll in a moment. Without her help, it might well be that magic had to end in the plain fact of Charlotte before I could make the final decision to abandon magic in exchange for something much more desirable. In mentioning the scroll, Helen is referring to her key experience, which came sometime after the Mayo Clinic trip, in which she decided once and for all to abandon magic. So that's what I'm going to invite us all to do today, to abandon magic. So Helen writes, my own magic phase ended abruptly with a particularly clear picture in which I knew I had made an irrevocable choice. I saw myself entering a cave cut into a rock formation on a bleak, windswept seacoast. All I found in the cave was a large and very old parchment scroll. Its ends were attached to heavy gold-tipped poles, and the scroll was wrapped around them, so they met in the middle of the scroll and were tightly bound together. So can you guys imagine that? You know what a scroll looks like, and you just unroll it a little. With some difficulty, I managed to untie the ends and open the scroll just enough to reveal the center panel on which the two words were written, God is. Then I unrolled the scroll all the way. As I did so, tiny letters began to appear on both sides of the panel. So the left and the right, she can see there's writing. The silent voice, which I had heard before, explained the situation mentally to me. If you look at the left side, you will be able to read the past, said the voice. If you look at the right side, you will be able to read the future. The little letters on the sides of the panel were becoming clearer, but I hesitated only for a moment before rolling up the scroll sufficiently to conceal everything except the center panel. And she said, I'm not interested in reading the past or the future. I said with finality, I'll just stop with this. God is. The voice sounded both reassured and reassuring. You made it this time. It said, thank you. And that, it seemed, was that. And so you come to a decision where you said, I don't need to know the future and I don't need to know the past. God is. Who's on board with that? Yes. Okay. Who's on board with that out there? Type in yes.
There's 140 watching.
Woo! In this vision, then, Helen made an irrevocable choice to renounce the use of her abilities for purposes of the ego and devote them purely to God. With that decision, her preparation for being the scribe of A Course in Miracles was complete. I just got waves. You know, and that's amazing, right? Like you just make a decision, like I don't need to use the power that has been given to me for money, for a house, for a husband, for anything. Like I'm recognizing I'm here in this lifetime to remember the truth of what I am and to extend it, to help others. That's it. And Jesus is very clear, like that's a dismantling. Like, we have an entire identity and personality and a life that will be demolished with that kind of a choice, because you can't be the same person, right? It's just like your whole life, and it's not going to happen in a way that's faster than you can handle it. Is the best way I can say it. Like, for some people, it is like the rug being pulled out of them. But I want you to know that was your choice. If the rug is pulled out from, and it's been pulled out from under me. It was like, Oliver, I made a decision. I'm here only for you, God. I'm all yours. 6 days later, lost my job in New York City. And it was just like, okay. But I knew later, I wanted it fast like that. I didn't want this slowly evolving thing. But for other people, it's like, all right, let's just kind of take this at a slower pace. And you'll get that too. And so it says, Helen knew this vision was pivotal, and it was only a number of years later that she discovered that it may not have been entirely subjective. So then there's a whole big story in here. In the summer of 1973, Helen, Bill, and Ken Wapnick went to the cave. They found the cave there, and they didn't know that it was actually, there was a cave there till they got there. Bill told me, because he read it after I told him I wanted to do this today, and I think we're going there. Bill's like, I'm going. I said, I'm going with you. It's, where is it? In Israel?
It's at the Dead Sea
Where is that?
in Israel.
Okay.
Yeah, near Tel Aviv, near Jerusalem.
So they ended up visiting Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and there's a community there called the Essenes, which some of you may have heard, and that was the community back when Jesus came into time and space, where they trained him. They were this group of individuals who were just highly developed psychically, just very centered. They knew the truth. They lived very simply. And Helen describes what happened when she got to the cave says most scholars believe that the people who lived at Qumran were members of the Essenes, a Jewish sect dedicated to voluntary poverty, communal living, and messianic expectations. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found in caves near the ruins of the community and appear to have been the library of the community. Ken Wapnick tells the story of Helen's visit to Qumran. Almost from the moment we arrived in Qumran, Helen was visibly moved, most uncharacteristic of her. As we stood at the site of this ancient community, we looked across the roped-off area to a series of caves, including the one where the scrolls were found in cylinders. At some point, Helen burst into tears and told us that the cave in front of her was the exact cave she sent her vision, God is scroll. I'm just getting like waves and waves right now. She then exclaimed that she was standing on the holiest place on earth. And as you might know from A Course in Miracles, the holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred turns into a present love. Turning around to look at the Dead Sea not far from Qumran, Helen remarked that the water level was too low and that it should be considerably higher. Bill consulted his guidebook, and sure enough, it stated that 2,000 years ago, the water level had indeed been much higher. Helen and I then walked towards some of the ruins, and she told me of her strong impulse to walk over to the area which the Essenes had used as their cemetery, but then she felt an equally strong impulse from Jesus not to do so, hearing him say to her, "Let the dead bury the dead." And so Helen stayed away from what she almost certainly felt to be her own gravesite 1,900 years ago. So says, Robert Perry says, the implication from this writing seems to be that in that life she had misused her abilities. And that's why that was the holiest spot on earth, because she was literally, physically gone back to the location where she had misused her abilities. And now here she was, and she had already made the decision in her vision to use her abilities only for God, and is now the holiest place on earth. And that in this vision, she was traveling back to the point, I love this, at which the error was made to make another choice with Jesus. And he talks about that in the Course in Miracles, that we're literally going to keep circling back to the place where you didn't make the right choice. And it's going to show up in what appears to be different situations and different people, but the content's always the same. You lied, or you were selfish, or you something. And you were afraid, and you wandered off. You covered it all up and said, oh, it's okay. You like said, why it's okay that you lied, or whatever you did. But it hasn't been corrected in your mind, therefore, you have to come back to that point again. So now it's going to be set up in a different scenario, different people, and you're going to come back to that place now, and you're going to make another choice. Like, I love Byron Katie. And Byron Katie talks about when she was going through her own awakening, she would have these situations where she'd just tell a little lie. Like, oh, you look nice. And then she'd walk away and she'd realize that wasn't honest. She had to go back to the person and tell them, I lied. And she said she kept doing it. She kept realizing, I have to totally live in integrity and not say things. Because what is you look nice? What is that if you don't really look nice? It's ego. It's me trying to make you like me. And you're coming back to that place and you're recognizing, like, oh, wow, I wasn't honest with you. That's a very poor example, but that's really what it is. How many times do you say, I feel fine? That's lying if you don't feel fine. Like, how many times do you do something to make yourself look better? That's lying. And you come into an integrity now where you're like, I am not going to do that anymore. I'm going to allow myself to show myself. And then everything that's buried is now there to be seen so that it can be removed. So it says that the Essenes were renowned for reading the future. They are among those who profess to foretell what is to come, being thoroughly trained in holy books, various purifications, and concise sayings of prophet. Rarely, if ever, do they fail in their predictions, but that's magic. That's what he's saying. Yep, you can have that ability. But you have to recognize, and you know what, it's like, I do believe that some abilities are used. It's not like predicting the future, but like those guys that can actually relate messages from the dead to their loved ones, that can be used for the Holy Spirit. It's not that your abilities are wrong if you're using them, like Helen's psychic ability brought us A Course in Miracles. Right? So don't get me wrong. Like, what I'm expressing here is that she didn't write A Course in Miracles for fame. She wrote it because that was the instruction, and she was using it to help others. She even didn't put her name on the book. Like, she recognized, there's nothing wrong with that either, but that's really where your decisions are like, what am I here for? And so it's saying here that it was in this decision that her scribal abilities were able to be used. And it says, Helen could redirect her scribal abilities away from the past and future and toward God in the present. Then not only could she find God, but she could access spiritual wisdom that would enable others to find God. Welcome. And compared to this greatest of all goals, finding out what happened in the past or what will happen in the future shrinks into insignificance. And then Robert Perry talks about the God is idea, which comes from Workbook Lesson 169. Oneness is simply the idea that God is. And in his being, he encompasses all things. No mind holds anything but him. We say God is, and then we cease to speak. Let's say that. God is.
God is.
For in that knowledge, words are meaningless. There are no lips to speak them, and no part of mind sufficiently distinct to feel that it is now aware of something not itself. It has united with its source, and like the source itself, it merely is. Last night when I went to bed, I opened, I always have the Course of Miracles by my bed, and I always just pick it up, before I go to bed. And I landed, I believe it was on lesson 91, and it talks about giving 20 minutes with your eyes closed, instructing yourself, I'm not a body. And, and then it's asking, well, if I'm not a body, what am I? And you're allowing yourself to have a direct experience. And I like that Jesus knows it's going to take longer than an instant. He says 20 minutes. Give yourself 20 minutes with your eyes closed to instruct yourself, I'm not a body. And then he says, if I'm not a body, what am I? And what he does in that particular lesson is, I am not weak, but strong. Like he takes the false belief and he replaces it with the truth. And so he's saying, you will feel the strength of God. Feel it. Like come into that place. And that's what this is. God is. You come into that place when you know yourself and you know you're not the body. Who knows that? You're not the body. And it still tempts us, right? It still will bring us into it's I don't know. I can't ignore it. I just can't, but it's not a problem. It's just like the I that is the Christ is the thing that's moving through the world, not the body, not the personality. And I love how Jesus says, everyone's going to think you are as you were before. They are going to think you are just like them. That's why I always say you're like Undercover Agent. Because you're moving through the world and you look just like them. But you know you're not like them. And so it's a happy game that children play to bring people into the space where you now abide. I am in the world, but not of the world. This is not my home. This is not your home. And we're home in heaven. And so for a moment, it looks like fall back. And then, oh yeah, right, I'm not a body. And you're back in the abiding place. And so for, a while, it's drop into old habits, remember the truth. Drop back, remember. Drop back, remember. But the time gets shorter and shorter, right?
Yes.
Like you catch it faster. You don't stay there so long. And then it just happens of itself. Like the purification is complete. And yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I don't know when it was, I was reading that section from Jesus Christ in the clarification of terms. And I put my name in all the places where it said, Jesus was a man who saw the face of Christ and all his brothers and remembered God. So I was like, Lisa is a woman who saw the face of Christ in all her brothers and remembered God. And I took the whole section because it describes Jesus as that. And I just thought it's time for me to do that, for me to insert my name in there. And it talks about how Jesus made the journey, now is helping others to make the journey. So when I inserted my name, I'm like, okay, my turn. So Jesus isn't outside of us anymore. Jesus isn't a guy that's separate from me. Jesus is what my mind is. He is what your mind is as the Christ. Very exciting. I'm so grateful because we're all together doing this. And this becomes the holiest place on earth. And now you can move out from this place and the past is over. This room right here on this time in this space becomes the place where you can just say, I'm not picking up my old stories anymore. And I assure you, they will come back. They just will. When you walk out the door, your old problems and your old difficulty will just kind of creep back in for a moment. But you'll recognize, no, I'm not going there anymore. So I would like to open it up. We have 15 minutes for comments, questions, declarations, renouncing magic.
I renounce magic. I just have, since I went on the Abraham thing, such a stillness that comes upon me now. And it's like you said, the thought will come out. Something will pull me out of my vortex, of my place, with Source, God, everyone. And I can pop myself back in real quicker now. It's just happening. Before I'd have to really work at it. Now I just nope, and back I go. And the whole time you're talking, I'm hearing my guide saying, be still and be. Because I used to try to give this to people, try to spiritually enlighten people, and I can only be. And it's a fine line. If I go too far and say something, then it's not where I'm supposed to be. If I be, then I'm there, and they're seeing me. It's how am I coming into people in the world, other than me telling them what to do, because I always tried to fix people. That was my thing as a woman and a mother. Always trying to fix everyone and everything. Today, I just hold the light and be. And if it's meant to be, it is. And if I continue to see myself trying to make them understand me, I've lost the whole concept of who I am and they are, and I have to step away. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, I've said before, I love that line from the Bible. If I be lifted up, all men will be drawn unto me. Like you just rise up into that place of joy. And because all those people that I think have problems are my own effects. So when I rise up, get up and walk. Like it's so funny on the Lisa show. I find myself just being very direct lately. Like get up, get up, get up. Like Jesus said, get up. Jesus did not ask you, how's it going? He just said, get up, pick up your bed and walk. Right? He didn't ask you to list your symptoms or tell him your problems or have a therapy session. He's just he saw, and all he ever said was that it is not I, but the Father. It's the presence of you that does the healing, not you, not the ego. And that's the renunciation of magic. And so it's, if I be lifted up, like just yesterday somebody asked me, did I write a new state of being card? Because in the 40-day program, I have people write their old state of being and then their new state of being, and to live in the new state of being for 40 days. And mine's always been really long. I used to, use those, those color cards if you guys have taken a 40-day, and they're long. I am Christ, I am light, I am spirit, I am this, I am blah, 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 long, long, long. And then I was driving to my mother's house the other morning, and I suddenly heard the words joyful child. I was like, oh my God, I've condensed my state of being card to 2 words, joyful child. And then I remembered that there's a little willow tree figurine. And I went online, and she's so cute. She's got jeans on, which is my uniform. She's got a white shirt on, which is normally my uniform. And she's just on the floor with my cute little haircut and just bare feet. So cute. And I'm like, that's all I have to remember. Joyful child. I'm a child of God. I don't need to make a big deal out of healing, or it's not serious business. Jesus didn't make it serious business. The world made it serious business. But he was just showing up. And the presence and the power and the intelligence of his union with that light that he was healing everything. Bill has a question, or somebody.
There's a question online. Can I see the mic? So the question is, how do I stay in the holy instant, in the present, where God is all the time?
Well, it's a decision. I mean, I'm always a big advocate for the workbook lessons of A Course in Miracles, because those will guide you from the place where you are, and you're creating a constancy and a consistency and a discipline. Because otherwise and then it just happens of itself. You suddenly notice like, oh yeah, wow, I don't go to that other place anymore. But I think if you're trying to stay in the holy instant, you're not in the holy instant. Like you've lost it, because now you have an idea of what the holy instant is. And how do I stay in some preconceived place of what I think it's supposed to look like? And to me it's really just like a decision to stay present. That's it. Like just to stay present, watch when you slide off into your mind going here, come back, slide off again, come back. Like it's just mind training. So I hope that answered it, but and I'm sure other people have different answers for that.
That was
What?
Monica. She said thank you.
So what?
Is that when you ask the questions, like you were talking about up there, that you begin to, like it's triggering a pattern? Oh, what's that pattern? What's that trigger? What's that question? Ask the question of yourself. Am I in the presence of whatever you were just talking about?
Well, she's asking to ask the question, when am I in the presence? Am I in the presence?
Yeah.
Like I actually find that if I have to ask the question, I'm not in the moment.
Yeah.
When I'm in the moment, like I've wandered off here, but whenever I'm present, like I'm not thinking anything. It's just me and whoever's in front of me or whatever's.
Right. Yeah.
It's a really interesting idea to think that you have to stay there. That's a trick that the ego's trying to get you to think, oh, I have to stay there and I have to be in peace all the time.
Yeah.
Good luck, because in my experience, it doesn't work that way. It's always like, okay, I'm being challenged with another belief that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I have to learn how to say, challenge it. Is that true? I do the Byron Katie all the time, but it's really the idea that you're expecting yourself to be enlightened fully and never have another. Like I had a client say that yesterday. I just want to be in bliss all the time, and I just want to pretend every day is Christmas, and I'm here to give my gifts, and people are just happy open. I'm like, what fantasy are you in?
Yeah.
Like that isn't how this works. This is real.
Yeah.
We're here to be who we really are, but don't think it's going to be like bliss all the time.
Yeah.
It's really that we're converting agencies. We're converting darkness to light. And that's what Jesus is teaching us to be, teachers of God, where we're not, well, I don't want to say the word, we're not lying to ourselves anymore. We're being honest. Mm-hmm. When you're in pain, ask for help. And when you're not great, be grateful. But be grateful for the pain too, because it's showing you that there's something you need to look at. Yeah. It's like having a disease. There's something you need to look at. You've somehow created a disease for yourself. It's sad, but not really. It's just a wake-up call. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, where are you off? Where are you not paying attention to you? and what you love and what you want and who you really are. This is work. That's why it's called the work.
Yep.
Good. You know, in the workbook, it's a workbook lesson every day. Just pick it up. Do that practice. Stay in it. There's no magic formula. It's work.
Yep.
So have at it. It's more fun than what you think.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm so grateful you said that, because that's my experience. Like, I have all sorts of different kinds of emotion. There's a constancy of joy, but there's challenges. Like, I still have challenges. I still have things that come out of nowhere. Just like but that's how it's supposed to be. That's coming from my mind. It's like shocking. Like, oh, okay, this is happening. And okay, but I have the tools now to be present for it and not try to change it. To just go, interesting. And then from there, there's somebody on the 40-day program. This was so funny. She posted a photo. She was like on day 14, and she said, "I'm so angry and I'm so this, and I'm just sitting here in my chair doing the work and watching the video, and my cat jumps up on this chair and pees on it. I am so angry. And why did I create a situation where my cat would pee all over the chair?" And my friend Max typed in the response, "Well, that chair's got to go." And like everybody on the board who's done the mind training saw it as a place for laughter. But when you're in a place where it's like trying to make all the players in your dream act a certain way, like that cat should not be peeing on that chair. And by the end of the post, she was laughing. Like she was recognizing, like, okay, like, so anything that happens now, it's like, okay, like anybody who's ever been in a car with me, or walking down the street with me, if I see somebody who's not letting me through or honks at me, or I'm like, "I love you." And they're like, "Oh my God." Like, it's like a different response that you're having, where you're not getting angry or upset for the things that are happening. You're just joyfully kind of navigating, and you're just remembering the truth. Who's next? I have a few more minutes. Okay. Arthur.
Thank you. If I ask myself, where am I? I'm here. I'm always here in the holy instant. There's no place other than here. So when a thought takes me there, or an emotion or a feeling takes me there, if I embrace it, let it be, I'm here. Everything arises in the here. It's when I resist it that I go there. Mm-hmm. So it's the being. And the holy instant is constant. Mm-hmm. There's nothing other than the holy instant. Mm-hmm. So be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And embrace everything that arises in the here.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's a scary place for a lot of people, because we're so used to controlling. Like, if I let the future go and I stop trying to organize how I'm going to make money, how I'm going to survive, how I'm going to keep everything tidy like it should be, and I just let go, I'm just going to trust now. A lot of people don't dare to do that, because the mind just goes like on overdrive now. How will I pay my bills? What about this? What about this? My kids will totally misbehave if I'm not on them at all moments. And how will I, what about? And so it takes trust to live in that place, but that is the truth, like to live in that place. I saw a hand up over here.
Lisa, I learned so much from you, but one of the things that I heard this morning was, the altar is not within you, but it's with the person you're with or you're talking to. And that's so relevant to me, because I could never picture me taking a thought and putting it on the altar within me. So in the atonement, when I find I want to forgive someone, for me, I use, the Course by saying, I don't know what this is for, and I don't know what to do. So I give it to you, Holy Spirit. Take it from me, thy will be done. And when you said that about putting it on the altar, it was like, it just made it so clear that it's forgiven right away in that moment. So that makes me feel so much better. And I've learned something new again.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
I love that. And that is coming into this place again where it's just like we're recognizing like this is the altar. This is the altar to God right here. And if there's anything that comes into the altar, Jesus said 2,000 years ago, and he probably said it in the Course also, like if you think of a brother and he's not, I don't know how he says it, but it's something like, so often we think that we can go to God without our brother. And he's saying, if you reach the altar and you remember your brother and a grievance back there, leave the altar and go get your brother and clean it up. Like clean up that thing with your brother, because it's not happening in your brother. If you're thinking about it, it's happening in your mind. And that's why I love what you said, Monica, because this is work. And it's not hard work. In the beginning it is. Like, because it's the opposite of the way that we've been living. But it gets easier and easier where as soon as something comes into your mind as an upset or a grievance or fear, you see it. Ha, catch you little bugger, you thought. And you don't let the belief or the thought run the show anymore. So
For me, I don't really think too much about where I'm at because I just kind of go along with life, and I realize when I drop down and something happens, wow, I've been really going along with life. I've been in the holy instant or with God or whatever it is. I don't analyze anything. I only find out I'm not when I drop down and something happens. So it's really a smooth sailing for me.
Yep.
As opposed to, I gave up questioning everything
Yep.
a while back. I spent my whole life analyzing stuff. Thank heavens that went.
Yeah, thank you. And the way I think about it sometimes, like if it seems like things are rocky or something, I include that in as a fun way to look at it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to a different location now, like a new frequency or something. It's like it's shaking me out of some place, and it's like, all right, it's kind of like Moses leading the guys, out of their comfort zone, which was in prison. They were slaves and they didn't want to go. And he's like, come on, who's going? And nobody wants to leave the comfort of your own prison. But when you do, it's unknown territory. And when you go out from that place, you don't know what's coming next. I never know what's coming next. Never. Ever. I don't know what happens with the Teachers of God Foundation, with my marriage, with this Friday group, with my home, I don't know. No idea. And I don't need to know. Just to stay present in every moment. Lord, here I am. Here I am, Lord. That's why I'm a joyful child. Because it's like, okay, let's add more play into the equation now. Let's be the demonstration of freedom. So I thank you with all my heart, and this concludes our Friday group. So if you can all join me in a closing prayer. I love you guys. Who wants to do the prayer?
I love it. You gotta connect.
What's that prayer?
You do it. Perfect.
Your prayer.
Oh, that one.
Here comes Bob.
Wow.
So if anybody would like to give a donation, we have a donation box in the back. We do not pass it around. There's a donation button online for anybody watching live stream. We appreciate your support and generosity. And we say the unity blessings of the tides here, divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you. And Monica's going to do our closing prayer.
Let's take a deep breath and let go. Father, we give thanks for this day, this moment, this incredible holy instant of joining, where we come together in love and in light to just be who we really are. And we give thanks for each and every one of your brothers, of your children who are with us, our brothers, who we forgive and take home with us. As we make one final choice to be free and to be happy and to be in the light of your presence forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.